Hello, and welcome to the next in our series of conversations between myself, Craig Rebuck, and Feroze Dada. We're here on behalf of the Sylvan Healing Sanctuary, which is www.sylvanhealing.org. And we've just chosen some interesting subjects that we feel we can share some viewpoints about. And today's subject is about faith. So I think that there is an awful lot that can be said about faith, but I think it's quite important to recognize a distinction, if I may open a little bit for us, and that's the variation between faith within a religious perspective and faith within a self-humanitarian perspective, faith in oneself or faith in God. And maybe you can tell me what you had been thinking about.
Well, I haven't in that way, but it's a good starting question. I think probably we want to talk about faith in so far as it is non-religious, because then you go into a different dimension. I think faith in its ordinary usage, which I would say is believing in something beyond the power of reason. That sort of faith, you know. And I think maybe if you agree, we talk about that faith where people take action, but take action, as we know, without knowing the outcome of that action, having faith and trust in its outcome. Would you say that is the type of faith you were thinking of?
Let's just unfold this and let's see how the variation of this, because we may be talking about the same thing but with different language. So let's just fold. Tell me what you mean in that context.
Well, I mean, faith is something in the sense that the outcome that you're looking at is unknown, isn't it? Otherwise, you wouldn't need to have faith. Then it would be a plan, or it'd be an action, or whatever it is. So it's doing something, and then leaving it up to somebody or something superior, or the forces of nature, or whatever it might be, or just the quality of your actions to allow that outcome to take place. I think that's what we're talking about. That gap between action and outcome. And why do we take action? Sometimes without knowing what the outcome would be. Let me give you an example, Craig, if I may. A fledgling, a bird, for example, which is nesting on top of a mountain. And suddenly it takes its first flight. It leaps from a mountain, doesn't it? Not knowing what's going to happen to it. There's something innate in that bird, which says, I'm going to be okay if I take that literally leap of faith. I'm taking a leap of faith. And then it begins to fly, realizing it has wings. It doesn't know it has wings. It doesn't know it had a capacity to fly. There's something innate in faith, isn't it?
So in the context of this little experience that you put forward, I saw that in the relationship of courage, having the courage of one's convictions, having the courage to follow one's own belief in oneself. And I think that that's a really important part of how do we step out of the world that says do this, do that, do the other, live this way, follow this rule, and yet want to be true to oneself, to thine own self be true. And I think that's the courage that you're speaking about.
I think the way to look at it is this, that what could you do without this courage, without this faith? I mean, how could you operate if you didn't take action without knowing the outcome? Because it's just not possible that a person does an action with knowing the outcome. It's not possible. So I think people exercise faith all the time. Question is, what do they attribute this faith to? What do they believe about this faith? how does this outcome take place? This is where the mystery is, isn't it? Between, actually, I would say between our intention, our action, and outcome. These are the three things we should look at: intention, action, and outcome. Should we look at those three things? Because they actually have something, a step in that direction. So,
Sure.
what would you like to say, Craig?
Well, start with intention.
Yes.
Talk about the intention. So the intention of the bird flying, the outcome is that the bird is going to soar away and learn to have his or her wings. What would you say about the final part?
Well, I don't. In that particular, obviously, it reaches this outcome, which is the ability to fly and live a life. Without which, if it didn't have that faith, it would not be flying. It would just not exist. So, but I'm looking more at a human being. The bird and animal instinct, which is another subject, is just an illustration. I'm just talking about the intention of a human being. If the intention is good, then you will worry less about the outcome. If the action is good meaning in a Buddhist sort of way, noble, for the right reasons, for good intent, then you don't need to worry too much about the outcome. You're free from the outcome, because you've acted in the best possible way, with the best intention, and in the best possible effort. Then you're less concerned about its outcome. You don't cling to that outcome. You say, I've done my best. I'm happy with the intention. I mean well. I'm doing good, or want to do good. The outcome is not within my control. But at least you're happy.
Let me ask you a question. It's a question that I've been pondering around in the different forms of how we have debated things. Do you think that there is a difference in the way that Eastern philosophies, which would have influenced you, and Western philosophies, which have also influenced you, don't necessarily integrate in quite a similar way? Your intention of I've tried my best is almost a fate, an acceptance of one's position, which is not a particularly Western way. And the more industrialized that we are becoming in the West, it's either we follow this religious version of faith in God, faith in a universe, faith in something bigger, faith in ourselves. But that faith in fate is not something that's really spoken about.
So you're asking two questions. I think one about myself, my East and West approach. The answer is really experience through Pakistan, through Burma, through Italy, through UK. I think these are all rich pickings, if you like, if you're ready to do that. So that's a useful background to have, East and West. But actually, do you know, in a way, it does not depend upon any of those situations, which is God or divine or the universe, although I believe in it, but it doesn't. I think it simply believes in intention, effort equals outcome. I mean, it's just a pragmatic thing. It's not even a spiritual thing. It's just pragmatic to make the best possible intention, make the best possible effort, and not worry that much about the outcome, which you cannot control. To the extent you can, of course, you should follow up and so on, but should not be obsessed with this result.
Yes, but in a society that we live in, where money and meaning and results and status and stature is so powerful, and in fairness, we are mostly talking to a westernized audience here. So bringing in this sort of Eastern philosophical viewpoint is right. It's helpful because it almost allows this bridging of this gap between how does one live in the world, following the rules and the drive, allowing oneself to trust in oneself. And I come back to that statement, to thine own self be true. And that's so difficult. It's so difficult to be the salmon swimming up the river when everybody is swimming the other way, chasing after the more and more. And you're going, well, wait a minute, that doesn't suit me. I don't like that. It's not what I want to do.
No, but at the end of the day, I'm not talking about some spiritual philosophy. I mean, completely pragmatic.
Yes,
just to bring it to a very pragmatic level, we talk about intention, action, and outcome, and all those things in perspective should be done seamlessly, without stress and without forcing an outcome, which would not come anyway if you forced it. I think it's really important to realize that.
Yeah.
And lastly, in this chain of events, what is outcome? What is outcome? Is it something we are seeking, or is outcome something which is good? Is it something we want, or is it something we need? See, again, I think it was it's not about religion really. It's about a quote on Bhagavad Gita, which said, "I am not attached." He said, "Actions do not cling to me, because I'm not attached to their results." Those who understand this and practice it live in freedom. Now, I know it comes from a spiritual source, but actually it's completely pragmatic. It's completely pragmatic, and gives you a sense of freedom, which is what we should be learning about in this power-based world, isn't it, Craig? Everything is about money and power. But actually, there's more money and power, in a sense, to have that freedom, to have that faith, actually, even from a pragmatic perspective.
So I think for myself that chasing the ideology of the more and the bigger doesn't fulfill. The consumerism and consuming and the all-consuming is shallow and limited. So to support people to find meaning. So there were a couple of quotes that I found, and one that I sort of concocted. Maybe this is a sort of a sense of an ending, because this is a very big subject, and it's a case of enabling others to find what it is for themselves and to be honest within themselves. So the first quote I found, which I thought was very appropriate, but it comes from an unusual source. All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. And I think that's quite an interesting statement, because the dream can be living a fulfilled and balanced life, a simple way. That quote was by Walt Disney, which, when of course one takes that out of the scenario of animation and the world of Disney, it still has very deep meaning.
Of course, it's a fairy tale, and in a sense, yet it is. But this is not the subject. It's not about faith. That is about, dreaming, in a sense, fulfilling your dreams. I think yes, of course, it's a beautiful quote, and I believe that the power of the mind and our effort and our intention can achieve miracles. We can move mountains. And I think, in a sense, it's saying that in a very soft way. It's saying, if you have the courage, but again, it comes back to this, doesn't it? It comes back to your intention. It comes back to your effort, yes, which is what it is. And then the outcome, which may or may not be within our grasp. But all those first two things will give you a good result. It may not give you the result you want. It may give you the result you need. Now, I think, in a sense, probably now, you said, should these discussions take a sort of Eastern spiritual and others angle to it? I think it should, because that is something you and I believe in. That is what we are. We are sharing our understanding of that subject. And actually, what faith does is actually teach you humility.
Yes, I would agree with
which is so lacking in this modern society. This belief, this faith that you're only a small speck in this universe, that you have no, you can make your effort and you can make your intention, but for you to change the world and the universe really is not within your grasp. Understand that you're only a small speck in this universe. I think it's a good learning. That's why faith plays a part in your life. It's about humility.
So I wrote something for myself, which was maybe an ending in this sort of process of seeking one's own faith and belief in your courage of your convictions to stay to a path, trying to seek an inner peace, an external harmony. And maybe with that type of process, we could have a movement towards a golden era of meaning.
No, for sure. I think that if those things, look, you and I both know or experience, understand, all of hiccups in life, but to find that inner peace and have the courage, overcome fear, and have faith, through meditation, all the subjects we've talked about, can be enlightening, not just for yourself, but also for the community that is around you.
Of course.
Because we don't exist in isolation. Our actions, have an effect on everybody around us. And so if everybody was peaceful, felt peaceful from the inside out, I think it would be a much better world.
Well, let's say that it's one way you definitely have the opportunity to share in one's experiences, and I think that takes time. Intellectual property is so protective, but actually, what we're doing is that there is none. We're just sharing what we have our own sense of belief and understanding, and bringing these subjects into the fore for people to think about, plant some seeds, and people can water them for themselves and see where it goes.
Wonderful way to
really nice
to a nice morning's discussion with you, Craig. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Feroze. Thank you, and I look forward to our next one. Take care.